Morning.
So excuse us for the short delay, and now both ministers are there.
It's possible to start. I don't know if you prefer to speak in English or... Yes, it's maybe better. Thanks. Before the Brexit, we'll continue to speak in English. No, just to say that we have had with Michael a very good meeting this morning with all our colleagues, our members of the different delegations from the 28 member states in the Egmont Palace about the peer review that we are proposing since now 3 years. In line with the rule of law. I want just to say that it's a long process, and thanks to the support of Germany now we have a real proposal on the table with work since many times with Michael Roth on that. And it's possible to say that we have a very broad majority, I want to say more than 20 member states, who are on the same line about the principles that we have put on the paper. To explain that we want to organize a peer review about the rule of law, like we have a peer review about the budgetary situation in the different member states. And since many years, we exchange on the budgetary situation every year on all the member states. We are sending recommendations and so on and so forth. And now we try to say, it's time to do the same, to have the same definition of the rule of law, to try to prevent some difficulties in one of another member state without any discrimination, with an equal treatment for all the member states. And so we have seen year after year that it was possible to have more support in the member states, in the European Parliament. The Vice President of the Commission, Frans Timmermans, was also in the meeting, and we have also the same evaluation with the Commission. And more than that, now we have the unanimity to say that it's needed to organize a working group, and we will do that with the 28 member states to enter in the details of a procedure and to be able to start a real mechanism as soon as possible. And when I said, and I conclude with that, as soon as possible, I have seen the commitment of Finland to put such a kind of process in the priorities for the Finnish presidency after the actual presidency. So we are very confident because, I repeat, it was a very long process. We don't want to create a new administration. We will use the actual tools. We don't want to have a new organization to that. It's just to be able to organize a real peer review about the rule of law, democracy, human rights in the European Union, like we have a peer review about the economic criteria and the budgetary situation. Because I want just to add, because I read many things since many years about the proposal that we are making, and we have explained this morning again with Michael, it's a political process. It will be a discussion in the General Affairs Council with the ministers around the table. It's the real willingness not to send the procedure out of the game. It's a real political process, like we have a political process about the economic criteria. But I don't want to be too long. Thank you for hosting me in such a German with local. So thank you, Mike. But thanks more than that, Michael, for your commitment in this field, because I've seen that in Berlin we have worked hard to have such an opportunity this morning to convince many colleagues.
Yes, strengthening rule of law and our common values is very close to my heart, and team play at its best. It was a long and bumpy road, but today it was a really huge step forward in order to make clear that the European Union is first and foremost a union of common values, not just a single market. And this morning we sent a clear signal to both our citizens and the European institutions. We member states take our responsibility to respect and protect the rule of law seriously. We want to strengthen our community of values. I would like to emphasize three main goals. The first one is we have to make clear we are a union of values, and these values bind everybody. It's not just a nice to have. The second main goal is we need a common understanding. What does it mean in everyday life? Respect of rule of law. Because we have to take into consideration that a political consensus doesn't exist. The third message is we have to learn from each other. We have to face some challenges. regarding rule of law and common values, but not just in 2 or 3 member states. This is an obligation for all of us. Just to illustrate it, anti-Semitism, racism is a big, big challenge and a burden for us in Germany. Anti-Gypsyism, for instance. It may be our new mechanism can build bridges between West and East and North and South to overcome the stereotypes and the cliches. And our colleagues, and it was a really broad political consensus this morning, made clear we expect an EU mechanism. And our proposals, our guiding principles are very pragmatic, because everybody knows behind the scenes and on the stage that a treaty change to make the existing mechanism more capable is far away from reality. That's why our mechanism is embedded in the existing EU treaty. And I was extremely grateful, you already mentioned it, that our Finnish colleague made clear we are ready to present a forward-looking result, a good compromise at the end of the Finnish presidency.
Thank you, Mr. Ministers. I see there are questions. Let's start with Markus Becker from Spiegel Online.
A question for the two of you. When I read your proposal, you proposed that there will be discussions among the member states which might form the basis of an Article 7 procedure. Now, we already had discussions among the member states, and we have already 2 Article 7 processes which are arguably not very successful. So, and you say that this is a political process. So how is this more than just another talking shop? And is it good that this is a political process rather than a legal process, like, for example, Manfred Weber proposed with his rule of law mechanism, proposing that there might be an external body? So how is this just more of the same, more of a talking shop?
The Article 7 procedure is very much focused on 2 member states. And there is one misunderstanding. Some colleagues criticized us, and they criticized the Article 7 procedure because this is just an instrument of the West in order to blackmail the East. That's absolutely not the case. And the new procedure, the periodic peer review, is an invitation, and it's an obligation to all EU member states. On a regular basis, there is an evaluation of the situation of the state of rule of law in all EU member states. And that makes a difference to the existing mechanisms. And we are very open that we have to elaborate the modalities and the procedures of the mechanism, but we are very open. At the end, and I fully agree with my colleague, with Didier, we should use the existing tools and the existing institutions. Just to give you 2 examples, the Fundamental Rights Agency, I very much appreciate its expertise, and the second one is the Venice Commission of the Council of Europe that could help us. And so it's very pragmatic. It's not necessary to change the EU treaties, and that makes the difference to other party proposals, for instance, from the European People's Parties. And just to make it clear, we are working very hard on this new mechanism for more than 1.5 or 2 years. We have had 3 workshops. We invited all EU member states to participate in these workshops because this is very objective. We are very much in favor of a lean procedure, no duplication of existing instruments. This is not a new instrument. This is just an amendment to the Article 7, but this is not. We don't want to delete the Article 7 procedure. It's very inclusive and equal treatment of all member states. That's key for many, many colleagues within the European Union.
I don't want to repeat, I will just add, to be clear about the actual procedure. I've put such a document on the table of the Geneva Council 3 years ago, at the beginning of 2016, so without any procedure on the table. And so it was clear that we have tried to start a process with a new mechanism. Due to what? Second point, I was Minister of Finance for 12 years in Belgium. So I have took part in many peer reviews about the budgetary situation. And of course it will be an evolution. At the beginning, I was in 1999, I have seen the first peer review with congratulations for all the member states, and just more for some than for others. And then, of course, we have seen more flexibility in the Stability and Growth Pact due to, if I remember well, overflows in Germany and difficulties in France. And it's just after the bank crisis and the sovereign debt crisis that it was possible to reinforce the mechanism. But it's a political one. And here it's also a political one. We want to have the same kind of peer review. And I want just to confirm that we want to work with the existing institutions in Vienna, the Agency, Human Rights, but also at the UN, because we have a periodic universal periodic review at the UN level in the Human Rights Council. There are some documents there, but also the Council of Europe with the Venice Commission and others. But again, it's a long process, but it was started before the different procedures about Article 7, and we don't want to change that. There is a procedure about the Article 7. Here it's more to have the same definition of rule of law and to prevent also some possible deviation in one or another country.
Following up to what you just said, do you think it will also take 10 to 15 years to reach a stage where these common values that you praise, that you want to strengthen, will it take 10 to 15 years, like on the budgetary issue?
I hope that it will be easier to go faster than about the budgetary situation. Maybe first because we have had already 3 years' time to discuss on that. And the idea today was to come to a common vision about the principles, because we have seen that there is an agreement in the European Parliament about such a possible procedure. There is also some ideas about that in the European Commission and with Frans Timmermans. And so it will be a debate during the electoral campaign for the European elections. Do we want in the European Union to explain that we are sharing the same values? And it's also important to control the respect and the full respect of the rule of law and the values in the European Union, that we are asking to the member state to respect the economical convergence and the economic criteria. And so I'm hoping that after the elections, with the new Commission, the new Parliament, but with the Council, with the same member states and maybe one less after the Brexit, we will continue to work hard on that. And I said, and like Michael, the Finnish presidency, to take that on board as a priority, but I know that we will have another presidency, but not so far. We have a German presidency in the future, and so it will be also a good moment to re-insist on the process.
I appreciate the commitment of our Finnish colleague, and at the end we have to take into consideration that there is a clear expectation in our societies. We have to act right now.
Bernardo from El País.
Mr. Reynders, you compare this instrument with the Stability and Growth Pact, and as you know very well, in the Stability and Growth Pact there are fines to countries to pay. What would be the consequences for the political consequences for the countries to pay the federal review? It would be an Article 7 to the Minister. With this proposal, you give up the proposal for linking the rule of law and the use of the structural funds?
But maybe first I want to say that it's a specific procedure, so we will first of all exchange on the basis of different documents coming from different institutions. I said the Council of Europe and maybe also the agency in Vienna and others, so we don't ask to have new analysis coming from others, but the Commission will come, of course, with some reflections, maybe some proposals for recommendations. That's the first element in a peer review. What kind of exchange about the best practices, but also what kind of recommendations from for the different member states. That's the same kind of process than in the budgetary mechanism. The second element, of course, on the basis of such an analysis, we will verify if it's possible for the member state to fulfill all the criteria in line with the rule of law. If it's not the case, there are different mechanisms existing mechanism, of course, Article 7, different procedure before the Court of Justice. There are also some possibilities. And maybe, because we are on the same line on that, we ask some conditionality in the MFF and in the budgetary discussion. So why not? But the first element is to prevent and to try to send recommendations. If one member state doesn't try or doesn't success to apply the recommendations, there are different possible mechanisms.
We don't see a connection between the peer review and the Article 7 procedure. And for us, it's crystal clear. We remain committed to the Commission's proposal to strengthen the link between the EU budget and the rule of law. Yep. And this is one of our key issues on our agenda for the MFF negotiations.
I think I saw a question from Jonathan from Bloomberg. Okay.
In the middle, Oliver Grimm with the Austrian newspaper. Secretary Roth, I'm a bit confused. You just said we don't see any connection between the peer review and Article 7. But a moment ago you said this is going to be an amendment to Article 7. Did you actually mean it's going to be a kind of a complement to Article 7, something that adds as an add-on? Because if it's an amendment, strictly speaking, we would of course need treaty change, and that.
Okay, I don't want to discuss this issue with you legally. I just want to discuss it with you politically. And again, this is a completely new mechanism. And this is not a legal connection between the peer review and the Article 7 procedure.
I think it's time for more questions.
David Carretta, Radio Radicale, Italian Radio. How could you imagine to take on board countries like Italy, which are going in the opposite direction on the form and on the substance of this issue? The form saying no interference by the EU on our businesses, and on the substance saying mainly what you know very well what the government is doing in terms of rule of law, even with independent authorities, racism and so on. So is it possible to take Italy and other countries like Italy on board?
In previous years, Italy played a key role in order to strengthen the rule of law. Within the Italian presidency, it was a huge milestone for all of us that we established a so-called rule of law dialogue. And we have had several meetings with our distinguished colleague from Italy. That's my observation, that Italy wants to play a very constructive role. They also support this idea. They just illustrated in our dialogue that they don't want to discuss just the constitutional issues. They want to discuss the mechanism in a more broader sense.
I want to confirm that they are on board since the beginning of the discussion 3 years ago, and that also today, we have had a meeting today, of course, with our colleague from Italy around the table, with the same commitment to work in the next months to find a way to have a real mechanism. Of course, in a broader sense, also respect, to give an example, to the framework of the European institution. I mean, that means that they want also to see if everybody is applying the same rules at different issues in the European Union. But no, since the beginning, Italy is on board, and this morning again.
One last question. Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm Katrin Harmai, Hungarian journalist, newspaper Népszava. If I understand you correctly, you envisage this peer review in the framework of the intergovernmental cooperation, while the two other institutions also working on a rule of law mechanism. The European Parliament put it on the table already, and the Commission is coming up with his own proposal in June or something like that. Why don't you wait for these proposals? Why do you feel it's necessary for the Council to come up something new in this field?
But if you are looking to, I said, the budgetary procedure, it's a discussion at the Council level. on proposals coming from the Commission. And so we try to do quite the same. We try to work with the Commission, and I said the Vice President, Frans Timmermans, was attending the meeting this morning, and so we will see if it will be possible from the beginning to start with, of course, a discussion at the political level with the ministers on the table, but with some proposals and maybe with an active role from the Commission on the basis of external advice. By external, I mean Council of Europe or the agency in Vienna.
We are very much in favor of strengthening the community method. That's clear and that's obvious, and this is a clear expectation of our colleagues within the within our format of the Ministers for Europe. At the end, the Council has to sit in the driver's seat regarding strengthened rule of law. This is a strange burden sharing that, for instance, the Commission is in charge for rule of law and we are just in charge for the money. It won't work. And that's why all EU institutions, the European Parliament, the EU Commission, and also the Council takes responsibility for strengthening and defending the core values of the European Union. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ministers.
Vielen Dank.
Merci.
Vielen Dank.
Okay. So we have a meeting.